Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, April 5th meeting of the City of Lebanon's Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Could we have roll call, please?
Mark Banneman.
Here.
Bruce Polly.
Here.
Chad Kiger.
Here.
Ron Edwards.
Here.
Lori Gross. Here.
Okay, we've had a roll call. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Second the motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor, aye. Aye. Motion carries. We've got a pretty big agenda tonight. This is a public meeting, so everybody will get a chance to speak. I've had a couple people question if they could have, our standard time that we've been allowing is 3 minutes for comment from the audience. And I've had a couple people that ask for more time. For that to happen, we've got to vote on it and have a 2/3 majority. So we'll get that out of the way. So I would entertain a motion to extend the 3-minute time frame for the public on any of the agendas tonight.
Will we be having a not to exceed time limit, say like 6 minutes or 5 minutes?
Let's say 5.
Well, the bylaws state that it's 10 minutes per docket,
Yes.
and I don't feel that that's totally fair. And we've always been going with 3 minutes, and so I say I would like to take a vote and leave it at 3 minutes and see how this vote goes, and then we would work from there, I guess.
Okay, just to clarify, the vote is to keep the time limit at 3 minutes and not
That's
extend it?
correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I would like a motion.
I make a motion to leave it at 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Kelly, you need to take a roll on this one, please.
Okay. Mark Banneman.
Aye.
Bruce Polly.
Aye.
Chad Kiger.
Aye.
Ron Edwards.
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, so we will leave it at 3 minutes. Chad will be using a watch if need be. So we will get started. The first item on the docket is our old business, which is continued from the March meeting. It's docket number 2114. John Stewart requesting a development standard variance to construct a detached garage located at 1526 Ashley Drive. Property is zoned SF3, which is single family. Matt?
Good evening, Board. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. This is my first time in front of the BZA, so I may get a little excited and get a little rambly, so if I go too quick, please let me know. And as you mentioned, Mr. Pauly, we do have a pretty full agenda, so I'm going to try to move through these quickly since you guys have had a time to review the packets. If there's any, like again, if you need me to slow down, please let me know. I'm more than happy to slow down or clarify anything. As you mentioned, Mr. Pauly, the first item is 21-14. This is the first time the variance request has appeared before the Board of Zoning Appeals. The lot currently contains a single-family residential home with an attached single-car garage and a small accessory structure in the rear yard. You can see from the overhead here the property in question. The applicant intends to demolish the small accessory structure that you see on the northeast side of the property and then construct a 16 by 22 foot garage in the backyard. The applicant presented some construction plans, worked with staff, and staff had him amend some of the plans so that the side setback could be increased a little bit more. Currently, our UDO standards require a 10-foot side setback. This new structure that's being proposed will have a 6-foot side setback. So as we're going through the review criteria in evaluating these development standard requests, We have 3 statutory criteria that we're looking at. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. And then the last one, the strict application of the terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So as we go through here, I'm going to pull up the applicant's proposed site plan here. It's turned a little bit, so north is to the right of the drawing here. So as you see, in the location of the previously small structure, the proposed garage is hoping to be constructed. The site setback, they're proposing is 6 feet versus the required 10. So the reduction in the side setback, reducing it, would pose no imminent threat to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. While the structure will be closer in proximity to the side of the property line, the request is consistent with how other lots in the neighborhood have been developed. It would not be overly imposed on the immediate neighbors. The requested variance also is on the side setback is compatible with existing development in the neighborhood. Many of the properties in the immediate vicinity of the subject property, they also contain structures that with side setbacks consistent with or even less than what is being proposed here tonight. The applicant also reached out to the neighbor adjacent to the proposed garage, and that neighbor did not have any particular issues with this proposal. And then the last criteria, because the lots and the homes in this neighborhood are fairly small, and the subject property is additionally restricted by the presence of an electrical easement, the accessory structure setback requirement would require the applicant to locate the detached garage essentially in the middle of his backyard and further from the side property line than what is required for the primary structure, which is 7.5 feet. The development precedent that's been set by the neighboring properties includes structures that maintain side setbacks similar to what is being requested by the applicant. The strict application of the terms of the UDO would require the subject property to meet a side setback that is unique in the immediate area. So in conclusion, the City of Lebanon planning staff recommends approval of the development standards variance request to permit the construction of a garage that is 6 feet from the side property line. And with that, I will take any questions you might have.
Matt, when you said the building in the area has already set a precedent, are you referring to primary structure or other accessory structures?
Other accessory structures.
Okay.
I'm sorry, let me pull that back up here, and you can kind of see some of the neighboring properties and some of the accessory structures, mini barns, storage garages, things of that nature. If we had a bigger aerial view, you could see even more in that general proximity, even within a 1-block radius. You would find multiple other structures that were even closer than the proposed 6 feet setback.
You got another question?
Go ahead.
Did these other individuals did they come for a building permit or anything?
To my knowledge, I don't know. Some may have. Most of these are old structures that have been existing for a considerable amount of time. I don't believe any of them are new, per se. I guess I would hope that if they were new, they would have come through the proper channels and received the zoning variances as required. But without going home by home, structure by structure, I don't have a way to confirm that those were went through the proper procedure.
Okay.
Matt, I have a two-part question. Primary structure, total square feet, and then what does the UDO say in terms of maximum square footage of an accessory structure?
Sure. I do not know the square footage of the home, and maybe the applicant may be able to speak to that. But our UDO allows up to 50% on accessory structures. So an accessory structure could be up to 50% of the square footage of the primary structure.
Do we know the north side measurements of the primary structure? Just so I can get the graph that you showed, it looked like the house was kind of small in terms of the total size of the lot, and I was just trying to get a understanding of how big the home is compared to the 16 feet in length. I guess that would be the east side maybe, or north
Sure.
side?
Let me see if I can get a measurement for you on that. Mr. Stewart? Do you know the square footage of your property, or of your primary structure?
The house itself is 1,100 square feet.
1,048 square footage of the structure.
Okay.
So the accessory structure would be allowed 517, or,
Yeah,
I'm
so it's
sorry,
well under.
507, yeah,
Okay.
or 27.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Could the applicant please step forward? Give us your name and a little bit about what you're planning on doing.
John Stewart. Again, I'm just looking to add a garage to the property. Some years ago, I did turn part of the existing one-car garage into a dining room for the house, which made sense at the time. But now things have changed, just me and the house. I'm looking to stay there. I just need a little more garage space. So that's all I'm looking to do.
Any questions? I've got one, but I'm going back to look for something here. So the electrical easement, can you explain that a little bit? It says 7.5 feet. My question is, could the garage be moved over to increase that 6 foot?
Not really. To be able to access the garage, I need to be far enough past the east end of the house to be able to get into the garage. My issue is if I shove it over any farther the other direction, I wouldn't be able to get into the garage.
Could it be turned 45 degrees the other way, or 90 degrees?
It could. I'm trying to save more, as much yard space as I can for the house, since it is a fairly small property. And I would have to ship it back quite a bit doing it that way to be able to get in and out of the garage still. That's my only concern with doing that. I had thought about it, but it would take up a lot more room doing it that way.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Once again, it is a public meeting. If anybody from the audience cares to step forward and voice their opinion, now's the time. Seeing nobody get up, we will close public meeting. And Matt, do you have anything else you want to add or anything? Okay. Look to take a vote on this. Somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the development standard variance request permitting the construction of the garage that is 6 feet from the side property line.
Need a second?
A second.
A motion and a second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman?
Aye.
Chad Kiger?
Aye.
Bruce Polly?
Hey.
Ron Edwards?
Aye.
Lori Gross?
Aye.
Okay, it passed 4-1. Good luck. Okay, the next item on the docket is an Iron Man property. It's docket number 21-20, and this is in the new business, so everything from now on was scheduled for tonight. The property is located on North Lebanon Street at 409, 417, 423, 503, and 507, North Lebanon and Lebanon. The property is zoned multifamily residential and is within the downtown thoroughfare overlay district comprised of 1.16 acres. Matt?
All right, so as Mr. Pauly discussed, this is the first time these variance requests have appeared before the Board of Zoning Appeals. The subject property that's in question is on North Lebanon Street, just north of downtown, and you probably drive past it several times a day or throughout the week. They are 5 empty parcels along North Lebanon Street, just south of the Domino's Pizza. It formerly contained a series of single-family homes that have been converted into multifamily units. So as you can see from the diagram or the overhead here, these are the subject properties in question. Iron Main Properties, the applicant, has presented an intent to develop a new 3-story multifamily building with associated off-street parking. And due to the specific design and nature of the project and particular limitations of the existing property, a number of variance requests are needed to facilitate this development. And I won't go into too much detail. I think Mr. Blake has a small presentation to go into a little more detail about the development itself, but I'll just show you some of the renderings that were provided to us. This would be the view from North Lebanon Street facing the east. So you can see we're proposing the applicant is proposing a 3-story building that will have some depth and dimension to it and will surely meet our development standards as we progress forward. But one thing that I will clarify tonight is tonight we're not here to debate the development plan itself. Tonight we're talking specifically about the 8 variance requests that the applicant has presented. The Plan Commission meeting and the subsequent City Council meeting would be where we would, where any remonstrance to the plan itself would be discussed and debated at those presentations. So again, tonight we're just talking about these specific variance requests, and I'm going to just run through them. Again, there's quite a few of them, and I don't want to spend too much time on each of them, but I also want to make sure that we pass along all the relevant information. So as we're looking here, the requested variances that we'll go through will need to be evaluated on the same criteria as our most recent docket number, and those criteria were, not be injurious to public health, welfare, or general well-being of the community. The use and value of the adjacent properties, including the variance, would not be affected in a substantially adverse manner, and the strict application of the terms of the Unified Development Ordinance would result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So I'm just going to go through, and we'll start with the first variance request that's on here. I'll go through all of them, and then we can answer questions that you may have, and then we'll allow for some public comment and other questions and discussion. So the first variance request is front building setback. The Unified Development Ordinance requires a 60-foot front building setback for multifamily structures adjacent to an arterial street. Because the proposed site is within our urban corridor with much smaller setbacks, the applicant is proposing a setback of 5 feet to more closely mirror the adjacent structures to the subject property. In the analysis and the evaluation, the relief from the front building setback requirement would not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. The proposed setbacks will not cause any safety or visibility issues along North Lebanon Street or from the alley or the alley access to the north of the proposed development. The requested variance for front building setback will not affect the use and value of the area adjacent to the property in a substantially adverse manner. The proposed setback is consistent with existing development both to the north and south of the subject site. And then this next part, you're probably going to hear it several times tonight because it's applicable to several of these variance requests. The strict application of the terms of the Unified Development Ordinance result in practical difficulties in that when the Unified Development Ordinance was written and the standards for multifamily were defined, the standards were based on an assumption of a large greenfield garden-style apartment community. We have several of them on the south side of town. Canterbury is one of them that comes to mind, Kais Estates. So the multifamily ordinances were written with larger greenfield sites in mind. This particular property is unique in that it's an infill site within our urban core, almost in our downtown district, just outside of our downtown zone. So the setbacks associated with the multifamily district aren't applicable to an infill site in an urban environment. So it's where it's more appropriate to provide setbacks that were complementary to the neighboring and existing properties. Requiring the project to meet the required site setbacks would render these sites actually useless in a multifamily zone district. The next variance, parking space dimensions. The UDO requires parking spaces to be a minimum of 9 feet wide by 20 feet deep. Due to the lot restrictions behind the building, the applicant is proposing spaces that are 9 feet wide by 18 feet deep. In the review of this and evaluation of this variance request, staff had to decide what was more important to the development of the project. Was it 20-foot spaces, or could we still accommodate normal vehicle parking and allow for a landscape buffer along the eastern property line between the alley and the adjacent properties? So the relief from the parking space dimension poses no imminent threat to the public safety, health, morals, or general welfare. The proposed parking spaces will still provide adequate parking for passenger vehicles without blocking the drive aisle. We will still have a 24-foot drive aisle between the parking spaces, which is the UDO standard. The requested variance for relief from the parking space dimension will not affect the use and value of the area adjacent to the property in any substantially adverse manner. The proposed conditions will allow proper traffic flow through the site and will not create any issues for neighboring properties. So as you'll see from the development plan, there is access on the north side of the property as well as on the south side of the property out onto North 11th Street. And then finally, the strict application of the terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. If required to meet the parking space dimension requirements, the parking lot setbacks would be reduced and the landscaping would have to be eliminated or adjusted substantially, more than likely eliminated. So there would because there would be no longer appropriate space to accommodate that buffer zone. So it was determined that the parking space size reduction, would be most appropriate given the alternatives. I'm going to stop right here. Some of the discussion before the meeting talked about parking, and while it's not necessarily relevant to our discussion tonight on the variance request, the proposal does accommodate the required number of parking spaces. So our UDO requires 1.5 spaces for every 1-bedroom unit and 2 spaces for every 2 or 3-bedroom unit. As you can see on the screen here, the applicant is proposing 24 1-bedroom units, 18 2 or 3-bedroom units, which would total 72 spaces. Some of you may recall that there was an adjustment and carryover of required parking from the flats of Memory Hall parking, which that was a number of 14 spaces. The applicant has provided for those additional 14 spaces in this development. So 86 required spaces based on the Unified Development Ordinance and previous variance request, and 86 are provided on this proposed property.
I got one question while you're
Sure.
rolling through. On the previous, year ago, whenever it was, on the parking spaces for Memory Hall, is there a distance from Memory Hall, a maximum distance that the parking area has to be away, or within a certain distance?
There was not. There was not a requirement that was set forth on where the parking would be provided. And after staff review, they thought that the block away was sufficient enough to accommodate the parking or any overflow parking that may be needed from the Memory Hall Flats location.
Okay.
The third variance request is the maximum lot coverage. The UDO specifies a maximum lot coverage for all impervious surfaces shall not exceed 65%. Because the subject site is within the urban corridor, it's traditionally been developed at a much higher density, the applicant is proposing a maximum lot coverage of 85% to accommodate the proposed building and required parking. The staff analysis, the relief poses no imminent threat to public health, safety, general welfare. The applicant will still provide the appropriate detention and drainage for the site, even with the increased lot coverage. Because the subject site is located in an urban environment, many adjacent properties are also at a higher density than the required lot coverage. The proposal is consistent with adjacent and adjoining properties. And then also the maximum lot coverage requirement associated with the multifamily zoning district, again, assumes a larger greenfield garden-style apartment setup. The subject site is an infill site in an urban environment where it's more appropriate to provide a denser development complementary to the existing structures. Lighting intensity was the next variance request. Our UDO requires that light intensity should not exceed 0.3 foot candles at the subject property line. Because the proposed site has alleys adjacent to it on both the north and the east side, the applicant is proposing site lighting that will provide additional lighting onto those alleyways to provide some safe security and better travel along those. The light intensity at the neighboring property lines would meet or be less than the requirement of the UDO of the 0.3 foot candles. So the UDO requires it at the subject property line. The variance request is asking for it to be allowed up to the neighboring property line, so to allow some lighting into the alleyway. The staff analysis, again, the relief for will provide better lighting for the adjacent alleys, which would improve the overall safety, public health, morals, general welfare of the community. The requested variance for relief of the lighting intensity requirement will not affect the use and/or value of the neighboring properties in a substantially adverse manner. Again, the increased light intensity is only intended to provide lighting to the alleyways on the north and east side. And then the standard for the UDO assumes that adjacent property owners are continuous to the site. Again, we have alleyways that are separating the property lines, so public right-of-ways that are separating them. So in this case, the adjacent properties, the applicant intends to meet the lighting requirements once the light reaches the neighboring property lines, but does not intend for additional light with it, but does intend for additional light within the alleyway. Parking space maneuvering. The UDO does not permit parking spaces where maneuvering into or out of the space occurs with any public right-of-way or walkway. In order to meet the number of required parking spaces, the applicant had proposed parking spaces on the north side of the structure, which I'll pull up here, that would be closer to the entrance, allow the ADA accessible parking spaces on the north side, but they would back up into the adjacent public right-of-way on the north side alley. In review of this variance request, the staff, the relief from the parking maneuvering requirement poses no imminent threat to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. The alley is not heavily traveled currently, and nor is it a high-speed corridor, such as North Lebanon Street. So there is low potential for any unsafe interactions within that alleyway. The requested variance for relief of the parking space and maneuvering would not affect the use or value of adjacent properties in an adverse manner. The additional parking spaces will allow the applicant to provide the appropriate number of spaces for the development and also allow handicap spaces, again, in close proximity to the entrances. The proposed condition is no different than many of the neighboring properties that have alley access, garages and driveways that back up into the alley right-of-way as well. And then lastly, the strict application in terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. In order to meet the standard, the applicant would have to eliminate these proposed parking spaces, and this reduction would then cause them to not meet the minimum number of required parking spaces. It was determined it's most important to provide the appropriate number of spaces and make certain that any spaces are only accessed from the alley rather than from the main thoroughfare of North Lebanon Street.
Matt, I have a question.
Sure.
What about ladder trucks or ambulance or anything like that getting access?
Sure. The current city right-of-ways do allow for fire truck, and again, that's something that would be reviewed during TAC of the plan, before the Plan Commission for the development plan application. But it's my understanding that the applicant does intend to meet the necessary requirements to allow full 360-degree access for fire and EMT service, or emergency services.
Thank you.
Next variance, minimum living area per dwelling unit. Multifamily zoning requires a minimum living area of 750 square feet per dwelling. The applicant is proposing units ranging from 1 to 3 bedroom at 551 square feet all the way to almost 1,000 square feet. Many of the units within this facility will meet the minimum required square footage, and the average of the units actually exceeds the 750 minimum. But as you can see, I pulled up some of the layouts here, and kind of hard to see, but here's an example of a one-bedroom unit of 695 square feet with, living room, kitchen, bathroom, walk-in closet, still laundry and mechanical areas, so plenty of living space. But again, they do have some floor plans that are below the required 750. So the relief from the minimum living area requirements would pose no imminent threat to public health, safety, morals, general welfare of the community. The requested variance for relief from the living space will not affect the use and value of the adjacent property in a substantially adverse manner, in that the applicant is proposing a high-quality product that would improve the area, regardless of the size of the units within the structure. And then the strict application of the terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties of the use of the property. The applicant is proposing these units based on demand that they are seen as developers within the marketplace. Rather than artificially increasing the size of the units based on our UDO, it seemed most appropriate to respond to the market demands that the developer is seeing within the market, or within the multifamily rental market. Slide back down to the overall site. Side building setback. The UDO requires a 50-foot side building setback for multifamily structures. Again, this structure being proposed is in the urban corridor with much smaller lots and much smaller typical setbacks. And the applicant is proposing a side setback on the north side of the building of 33.5 feet as opposed to the required 50. So that's on the north side here where you see between the building and the ADA compliant parking spaces. The relief from the side setback, again, would pose no public health, safety, moral, or general welfare issues. The reduced setback will cause no visibility issues within the alleyway. We still have 33.5 feet from the structure to the property line, and you'll have approximately, just based on estimation, at least 20 feet from the building to the alleyway. The requested variance for side building setbacks would not affect the use and value of the adjacent properties in an adverse manner. The proposed setbacks are consistent with existing development, both north and south of the subject site. We can kind of see some of those. Pull the site back up. You can kind of see a little bit to the apartment community to the north. The Panola property has a closer setback than what the proposed development has, and then the property to the south has a reasonably similar setback to what is being proposed. So again, it's consistent with neighboring development to the property. And then lastly, the strict application of the terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties of the use of the property. The setbacks associated with multifamily, again, I'm repeating myself, but they assume a large greenfield site. This will be an urban infill project where it's more appropriate to provide setbacks consistent or complementary to the existing structures. Requiring the project to meet the required setbacks would render the site useless to development in a multifamily district. And then the last variance request is percentage of open space. The UDO requires that the minimum amount of common space as a percentage of net land in the multifamily district is 12%. Because the subject area is in an urban corridor with a much higher density, the development would typically be anticipated than what would typically be anticipated in the multifamily district. The applicant is requesting relief from this open space requirement. Again, no imminent threat to public health, safety, and morals, or general welfare of the community. The applicant would still be providing appropriate detention and drainage on the site, even with this reduction in open space. The requested variance for open space would not affect the use of the adjacent property in a substantially adverse manner. The proposed project is located in an urban environment where densities are higher than the typical greenfield multifamily developments, and the proposal is consistent with development patterns within the neighboring area. And then the last part of that analysis, strict application of the UDO would result in practical difficulties. The subject site is an infill site, again, repeating myself again, where it's more appropriate to provide denser development complementary to the existing uses. Requiring the property to meet the requirement would render this property useless in the multifamily zone district. So after all of that, City of Lebanon Planning staff recommends approval of the development standard variance request to permit relief from the 8 identified development standard requirements of the UDO. And while you guys are thinking of it, I'm going to take a drink because my mouth's dry from talking so much. I'll take any questions.
Anybody have any question for Mr. Reynolds?
I'm good.
You can have another drink, because I think no questions. Is the applicant available?
Okay, first of all, my name is Joe Blake. I'm one of the principals of Ironman Properties. And I suppose I should start with an apology for having so many variances before you tonight, and maybe to Matt especially for all of the talking that he had to do. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about what we're proposing to do on those lots on North Lebanon Street. I would like to communicate what our desire is, and that is to provide a property that is an asset to the community, that people look at and say that's a benefit, that's something that's an improvement to the north corridor of the city of Lebanon. There's so many good things that have been happening in Lebanon in the last 5 or 6 years. It's exciting to think about doing something with some lots that frankly are just sitting and looking kind of ugly at this point. So that's our intention, to provide high quality housing on that for the downtown. As you may know, we were the developer for the Flats of Lebanon, and also the owner of the Memory Hall, to the improvements that occurred there. So I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about the property and what our proposal is for the land. A little bit of context. This just shows where the number 4 is where the 451 Lebanon project would go. The other projects that we did are the rehab of Memory Hall, adding units to the gymnasium there at Memory Hall, and then building the 2 buildings labeled number 3 here, as well as the parking south of Memory Hall. That was all part of a development that we did a few years ago. This particular development will be 1 building, 42 units, and 86 parking spaces. Matt's already showed you the rendering of the property. It's intended to be a townhome-looking walk-up building that makes a transition from your downtown core to your residential area to the north. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about what the concept should look like and how do you put something on this piece of property that fits there and makes a nice transition between, as I said, downtown and the residential area to the north. This is a view of the building looking from the north to the south. I thought this was pretty cool that the architect could just drop the building on a picture on a photograph of your downtown. This actually isn't exactly right. This is an earlier concept where the building was longer. We had at one time a concept with more units in it, so the building isn't quite this long, but it gives you a feel for what the building looks like next to those apartments to the north, and then how it sits relative to Lebanon Street. The property, it's always a concern whenever people build multifamily, there's always a concern about, well, what is it that you're building? These are market rate apartments, and they're high quality market rate apartments. These are some photographs of a property that we're doing in Crawfordsville right now to give you an idea of the kinds of finishes that we put in our building. We use granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, high quality plumbing fixtures, lighting fixtures, and these are intended to be nice market rate apartments. And I will go so far as to say that I believe that they'll be the nicest apartments that you'll have in town. It'll be certainly the newest apartments, and this is a step up even from what we did at the Flats of Lebanon. So the site plan, you've seen this, it's 86 parking spaces. It is a lot of parking for the number of units that you have, but some of that is because of the zoning ordinance. We didn't want to ask for another variance, and then also the 14 parking spaces that we committed to putting on this property for the Flats of Lebanon. So the zoning variances, and Matt went through this, but I'll show them to you just graphically. This might help you just a bit. But there's the front yard setback here. There was actually an error in the document that I gave to Matt, so that's my fault. But that front yard setback he mentioned was 5 feet. It's actually 8 feet 11 inches. Small difference. Side yard setback is 33 feet 5 inches. Required is 50 feet. The minimum living area in the units, 695 is the smallest one. The percent open area is 2.2 versus 12%. Maximum lot coverage, 85, is the actual coverage. The UDO is 65%. Parking stall depth of 18 feet instead of 20. The drive lanes, as Matt said, are still 24 feet. Backup movement into the public right-of-way on the north end of the building. And then the light at the property line, that was actually something that we asked the plan staff to consider so that we could cast some light into those alleys to light them for safety reasons. So that's really the extent of my presentation. I would be happy to, there was a question about turning radiuses, and those will be designed in the final site plan to make sure that there are access is available for all emergency vehicles. These are variances that are similar to the variances that we requested 6 years ago when we developed the Flats of Lebanon. And again, the reason for these variances, as Matt has stated clearly, is just the UDO was developed with a different concept in mind. It wasn't developed with an urban multifamily concept. And what you have is you have property that's zoned multifamily. I believe it should be developed as multifamily, but the UDO just doesn't accommodate an urban design concept. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
I have a question.
Sure, Mr. Evans.
On the last picture you had there, the graph, you said that it's 700 minimum square feet instead of the 551. Is that correct?
So the UDO, you're talking about the square footage per unit?
Correct.
Yeah, so the UDO is 750. Our smallest unit is 695.
695.
I put 700 on there.
Okay.
That's actually not.
Well, I had in one of the printouts that we have 551, so.
You know, I think that may be from the Flats of Lebanon.
Okay.
Because when we developed that, we had smaller units in that property.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that got in there.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Is it cost prohibitive to build like a first and second floor parking garage?
Yeah, it really is.
Even if you're charging for parking?
Yeah, that's the challenge. How do you charge for parking? Our neighbors, we try to be really good neighbors. We try to do everything we can to accommodate our neighbors. If you recall some past conversations, we got a lot of pushback that we didn't have sufficient parking and people aren't parking in your parking lot because we're charging them. We actually, when we developed the Flats of Lebanon, we decided to charge people, I think, $20 to park in that central parking lot in the Flats. And people could choose to do that or not. Well, A lot of people chose not to, and so they parked on other parking that we had on site. So the challenge is if you charge for parking, you're going to drive people out of the parking to find it somewhere else. And the neighbors would suggest to you that they're going to find it on the street in front of their house. So there's that issue, but then there's also just in order to pay for a parking structure, which is about $25,000 per site, per parking spot, the amount of money you'd have to charge for parking just wouldn't be feasible in Lebanon, Indiana. That's my view, Mr. Kiker, but
Yeah, my concern is that with 86 parking spaces, my concern is that the people that live around this property are going to be looking at a used car lot. And I'm concerned that we might be concerned with the beautification and the way the property looks on 39, but we're not as concerned as how it looks in the rear. And just trying to think through some ideas of how we might be able to help it blend in a little better with the surrounding neighborhood.
Well, if you have a very nice landscape standard in your development ordinance. And if you could show this, and Matt has already shown the landscape plan, but when I look at the landscape plan, this is just me as a developer, I actually had to call Matt and Ben and say, guys, does it really require this many trees and this many shrubs? There are a lot of trees and shrubs, and you can see just how many as you look at that landscape plan. But that's what the development ordinance requires, and that's what we're proposing to put in. Now, I'd be the first to tell you that there's too much parking on this site. If you just want my honest opinion, and I've had this conversation with planning staff, so I'm not talking behind their back, but there's a lot of parking for the amount of building that you're putting on here. And again, part of that is the development ordinance is set up for an urban situation, and we're also adding 14 parking spaces here that some believe are needed at the flats of Lebanon. And at the time, I was pretty clear that I did not believe that there was additional parking required at the flats of Lebanon. But anyway, that's just my opinion about this development plan with all the parking.
I have a question. On the parking on the, what was it, 12 spaces or whatever on the very south end, are those still at 18 foot versus the 20?
That's a great question. You know, I can't give you an honest answer to that. I would just have to.
Do you have any idea, Matt? Okay. Okay, any other questions? This is a public meeting. Thank you, you can sit down.
You're welcome.
It is a public meeting. Anybody would like to speak, step forward, and you're going to take the time.
Yes.
And need everybody to make sure that they sign in over here, anybody that speaks, if they would, please. Mr. Messenger.
Good evening, all. My name is John Messenger. I live at 518 North Meridian Street. I back up against the property at on the, let's see, northeast side of the proposed building. I do have a brief statement, and I'll try and keep it short and sweet. The 2014 Indiana Building Code restricts, excuse me, the allowable building height and area in Table 503. The planned to be Type 5B building, which is all combustible. The R2 classification has a maximum 2-story with 7,000 square feet per floor. If all of the structure components are treated to qualify a Type 5A building, it is permitted to go 3 stories and up to 12,000 square feet. However, area width and height restrictions and increased increases are based on a weighted average with a 20-foot setback. That's IBC 503 to 507. That's Indiana Building Code 503 to 507. If this is not provided, there is tremendous risk to the occupants and visitors to the building, as well as any first responders that respond to emergencies. And that's one of my statements. And then let me go to the Indiana Fire Code. If you can, my eyes, here we go. Sorry for my poor eyesight. Here we go, fire apparatus, here we go. Sorry. Bad eyes. Dimensions, this is Indiana Fire Code 503.2.1. Dimensions, fire apparatus access roads shall have an unobstructed width of not less than 20 feet, exclusive of shoulders except for approved security gates in accordance with section 503.6, and unobstructed vertical clearance of not less than 13 feet 6 inches. I just thought I'd state that. Let me see. Here. Fire apparatus access road, a road that provides fire apparatus access from a fire station to a facility, building, or portion thereof. This is a general term inclusive of all other terms such as fire lanes, public street, private street, parking, lot, lane, and access roadways. So that's pretty much my brief statement. I've lived there. My family grew up in this house. I've seen it go from houses to, I don't know when we changed to the family. Anyway, as far as that goes, be a lot of traffic going up and down my alley if you close two others. I think whoever purchased this property knew good and well there were two alleyways there, and I just disagree. That's something totally that doesn't have anything to address with what you have, but it's going to put quite a bit of traffic there. I think we need to look at the infrastructure on the roads. They won't hold up to a lot of the apparatuses, and it will, regardless of what they said, will be a big impact on my alleyway. You have a one-way going on William Street, Chicago Street. You can't get a plow truck down with cars parked on there. That's the only other two accesses, and it just put a big burden, I think, on quite a few. I speak for quite a few of the residents that I grew up with, paperboy all around the neighborhood, but that's been my life. You know, I've lived there pretty much my whole life, so it's been in the family. I oppose it strongly, so I hope these you'll take into consideration the codes that I told you and follow them. But thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Paul Van Clay, 404 North Meridian. I have had parking issues with Lebanon Flats in the past, but just wanted to say that I am glad to see someone take initiative in removing the old buildings that were there. I do appreciate someone taking, having the foresight and coming up with a plan. I do have a few concerns of the property. One of them is Howard Street that cuts right through the middle of the property. In fact, today I used Howard Street twice to go from my house on Meridian Street to Lebanon Street and take it to the north. So that being gone, I'd have to find other routes to go there. I'm not sure why, if someone buys adjoining property, they can take over a street. Howard Street between Lebanon Street and Meridian, there's a stop sign. There's also painted stop marks on the ground. I don't know that there's any other alleyways in town that have that. So I did go to the Lebanon Zoning Map. If you do a Google search of Lebanon, Indiana Zoning Map, I don't know if this is on or not, but it does come up and it does clearly show Howard Street right through the middle of this proposed development. So I don't know how we got to this point, that just because you buy properties on each side of a road, you get to automatically take over the road.
Thank you. Anybody else care to step forward? Okay, we will close the public end of the meeting. And Mr. Reynolds, could you step up again? I have two questions. I think I know the answer to one. This has not been before TAC yet, correct?
It has not. The development plan has not been submitted yet, has not been through TAC review. That's something that will occur prior to the Plan Commission, which the Plan Commission meeting is where the entire development plan, the project itself, would be evaluated and determined and discussed.
Maybe this is a question for Mr. Blake, but is the building proposed to be sprinkled?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. And then my last question is, he made reference to Howard Street. Is that a dedicated street or an alley, or what is that? Do you know?
My understanding, and I'm not going to get into particulars because I don't know the particulars on the process of vacation. So those two alleyways, Howard Street and the other alleyway, would have to be vacated through the normal process, which is through the Plan Commission and then through the Board of Works. So the vacation of the alleyways is a discussion that is not necessarily applicable to the variances discussion that we're having tonight. That would come up during the development plan review by the Plan Commission and again by the Board of Works to approve or deny those vacations of the right-of-ways.
I have a question, Matt.
Sure.
If we approve this tonight, but the city doesn't vacate the street, we're just being null and void tonight what we're doing?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, as with any development within our community, there are processes and procedures in place, different steps and stages that you have to go through. The development being proposed here has some variances that are being requested, so we're in front of you tonight. Had he not had any variance request, the development plan would go straight to the Plan Commission, TAC review, then Plan Commission, and then to council for their approval.
The public end of the meeting's been closed.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Are you finished then, Matt?
If you have any further questions?
Do you have any questions?
These together, or do you want to break?
Well, I'm gonna
I
get
do
to
have
it.
one more question, Matt.
Sure, Mark.
Do you know that the additional 14 parking spaces that were carried over, do we know, has there been an issue where those 14 spaces have been needed from Memory Hall, from flats? Do you have any information on that?
I think the answer to that would be subjective, just based off of your personal viewpoints. Public street parking is allowed. You're allowed to park your car on any public street for any amount of time, provided that the car is still operable. So I think, as the developer might tell you, and I think he may have in his presentation indicated that he did think those 14 spaces were required. He thought it was a bit overkill, and thought our parking standards were a little too stringent, which could be confirmed based on the last Plan Commission and City Council meeting, where the UDO parking standards actually were adjusted and amended. Our UDO used to require an additional space for every 7 units. That was amended at the March 11th or 13th Plan Commission, and then the March 22nd City Council meeting. They voted to amend those parking standards. So again, it's subjective, so our parking standards could be, or could have been, a little too stringent, and those 14 spaces may be excessive, but at the time that they developed that property, they were required by our ordinance, and that's what they're trying to do, is provide those required spaces based off the previous applications.
Okay.
Thank you.
Polly, did I make a final comment as well?
Absolutely.
So I appreciate Mr. Messenger bringing up the issue of IBC compliance. And without a doubt, our building will be code compliant. And there's a proper time and a place to review that compliance, and all of our properties have to go through not only a state design release, which reviews the code compliance, but they go through a local building plan review as well for code compliance. But I assure you, the way that the building is designed with sprinklers and with the fire separation that's built into the building, that it is code compliant. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then, I think it's been alluded to, but the whole alley vacation issue, I appreciate the concern there as well. But again, we will go before the city council and request those alley vacations, and that would be the appropriate time to decide whether that was acceptable or not. And then finally, on the parking issue, as Matt alluded to, everyone has an opinion about this. And I would just encourage you, if you have concerns about that, I would pick a time that everyone is home in the housing units there, north of the downtown, and just take a look at the parking and come to your own conclusion about whether there's an issue there or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now, no more questions for anybody, correct? We have 8 variance standards. Do you want to break them down individually, or do you want to take them all at once?
My vote would be for individual.
I get the hearing.
Yeah, I think individual would be the best approach.
We'll take them individually. Okay, so the first one will be the front setback. I would need a motion and a second.
I make a motion to approve the front yard setback variance. Trying to find it, there's no document for that.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, Kelly, would you take roll, please?
Mark Vandeman,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ed Kiger,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Okay, that front setback passed. Number 2 is the parking space dimensions. Once again, I need a motion.
Make a motion to approve docket 21-20, UDO section 7-5, parking space dimensions, to approve it.
Second.
Wait a minute, it's dash C, dash 12.
Okay, I missed that, excuse me. 12 parking spaces.
Okay, Kelly?
Chad, second that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mark Vandeman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Number 3 is the parking layout and design. Motion, please.
Which one is this?
With the lot
What do we-
coverage.
It's the max, what
Yes.
did you say?
Okay.
The third one is the parking layout and design, which is section 7.5.C.5.
The third one is actually maximum lot coverage. Yeah, UDO section 4.9.D.
Are they switched here then?
Yeah, I think the agenda has.
Okay, then I'm sorry. The maximum lot coverage.
These are different than the screen.
Let you use this.
Okay, so we are at, I'm sorry, so number 3 is the minimum lot coverage, which is UDO section 4.9.d. I need a motion on that one.
I'll make a motion to approve variance request number 3, maximum lot coverage.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay, Ronnie. Kelly?
Mark Bannerman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
No.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-1. Next one will be lighting intensity, section 7.15.B.3. Need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve UDO 7-1, 7-15-B-3, the exterior lighting. Motion to approve.
Second.
Mark Bannerman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
No.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Request variance number 5, the parking space maneuvering in the right-of-way, section 7.5.C.5. Get a motion, please. Somebody want to make a motion one way or the other?
Which one are we on? 3?
Number
5.
5.
I'll make the motion to approve UDO section 7.5.C.5.
Second.
Mark Bannerman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Okay, number 6 is the minimum living area per dwelling unit, which is section 4.9.d. Need a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve variance request number 6, minimum living area per dwelling unit.
Second.
Mark Bannerman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Sorry.
Okay. Request number 7, side building setback, section 4.9.d. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve UDO section 4.9.d.
Second.
Mark Bannerman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger, Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Okay, we got one more. Request number 8, the percentage of open space, which is section 8.15.b. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve variance request number 8, percentage open space.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Mark Bannerman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
No.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Congratulations, good luck. Docket number 21-21, the applicant is Valley City Sign for the Woodland Airstream Trailer project. The location of the property is 955 Lastly Drive here in Lebanon. The property sits on 3.84 acres. It's zoned planned business commercial. This is the first time that this particular request has come before the Board of Zoning Appeals. The board previously granted 4 development standards associated with the proposed Airstream dealership at a meeting on June 1st, 2020. Mr. Reynolds.
All right. This one should prove to be a little less cumbersome. Not as many requests on this one. As Mr. Pauly indicated, this is in regards to the Woodland Airstream dealership that is being proposed on the property on the south side of town. You kind of see the aerial that I've got pulled up on my screen, just north of I-65, behind the fire department on Lastly Drive. They may pull it up here in a moment. There we go. So the subject property is kind of there where the cul-de-sac will be. We'll sit along the interstate. As you mentioned, this is the first time that's come before the BZA. The applicant is proposing to construct a pole sign for the purposes of the Airstream dealership that they're going to be building. In this particular district, in the Planned Business Commercial District, pole signs, freestanding pole signs, are a conditional use, which means they must come before you and get approval before they can be installed. The applicant is proposing a pole sign that will go next to the interstate, and you have 3 criteria when reviewing pole sign applications. 1, the pole sign shall only be located within 1,000 feet of an interstate interchange. This particular proposed sign will be located 500 feet, so well within the 1,000 feet range. Pole-mounted signs shall not exceed 60 feet in height. The proposed sign will be 60 feet in height, so will not exceed our requirement. And then the maximum sign area shall not exceed 200 square feet per side. And as you'll see from the renderings here, the proposed pole sign is 192 square feet per side, so under the required 200. So again, in the evaluation of the conditional uses, you have statutory criteria that you have to consider. In this particular instance, there are 6 criteria, and I'll kind of read them as I'm reading the staff analysis. So the conditional use approval for the freestanding pole sign will not be detrimental to or endanger the community. The proposed use meets all required development standards for said facility and is located within the commercial area adjacent to the interstate. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including in the conditional use request, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The site is located on a commercial property adjacent to the interstate. The use will have no impact on adjacent commercial and industrial uses. The conditional use approval for a freestanding pole sign will have no impact on the normal and orderly development of the surrounding properties. The proposed use contained within the proposed Airstream dealership is surrounded by existing developed properties. All necessary infrastructure and utilities are provided to the site. The proposed freestanding pole sign does not conflict with the goals of our comprehensive plan or our unified development ordinance. The sign meets all applicable requirements for consideration of a conditional use. And lastly, according to the UDO Chapter 7.7H, freestanding pole signs are a conditional use within the planned business commercial zoning classification. And with that, the City of Lebanon Planning staff recommends approval of the conditional use request for a freestanding pole sign.
Matt, can you show us on the aerial map where the sign's going to go?
Sure. Be a little more challenging to see here. I'll scroll in here. You'll see the interstate to the south, and you'll see a red dot just to the, it's kind of hard, but I'll zoom into the dot is there. So the proposed sign will be at the southwest corner of the property.
Is this a lighted sign?
question. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would the applicant step forward, please?
Hi, Adam Coley. I was just recently hired to be the general manager for the Lebanon location of the Woodland Airstream.
Want to tell us anything about it, or?
So Woodland Airstream, their original dealership is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They're migrating down to open a second dealership here in Lebanon, right there next to the fire department. And as far as I know, right now, the site has the dirt pad ready to go and just waiting on a few more things to get started so we can get the building up. I know we're excited to be here and get started in Lebanon.
Any questions?
Does the pole sign placement have to do with the size of the sign and the proximity to the interstate, I'm assuming?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
So I think Matt said the UDO was 1,000 feet and this is 500, so it's closer to the interstate. Is that because the sign is smaller?
I don't have the answer for that.
Just wonder what the logic is.
Of putting the sign there?
Putting it closer to the interstate?
Of moving it closer?
Yeah, why is it 500 feet versus 1,000?
Probably due to visibility to get up over 465 is my assumption on that. Why we want to be closer to that interstate.
Okay. What the elevation is of the interstate?
Any other questions?
Pretty high. High up there.
I think I'm good.
Thank you.
20 feet?
Thank you.
30 feet?
Once again, this is a public meeting. If anybody cares to speak on either way, please step forward. Okay, we will close the public end of the meeting. If there's no other questions for the applicant or Matt, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the conditional use request for a freestanding pole sign.
A second?
Okay, Matt, Chad seconded it.
Okay. Mark Bannerman?
Aye.
Chad Kiger? Bruce Pauly?
Aye.
Ron Edwards?
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries.
It has to be.
Congratulations, good luck.
I was just sitting there looking at the sign dimension max. Probably can't read it because they're working within those dimensions.
Next item is docket number 21-22.
Very far.
Matt Watts for IMI LLC. Property is located at 3450 South Indianapolis Road here in Lebanon. It's single-family residential and sits on approximately 7.5 acres. The rentals.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Pauly. So this is the first time this variance request has been before the Lebanon BZA, although it's not a unique request as we just had a similar use request at Amston Trailer at your last meeting. Just to give a little background on this project, we are talking about the IMI facility that is located on South Indianapolis Road, south of town. The project location, as you can see, Interstate 65 and Indianapolis Road there in the photo. And then we'll get in a little bit more of the detail of the project in a moment. But some background, IMI is a concrete production company that has an existing concrete plant here in town. They also have an existing plant on the south side of Indianapolis that will be affected by the I-69 reconstruction. So they are looking to relocate the plant from the south side of Indianapolis to Lebanon, and to this particular property where they have an existing production facility. In addition to relocating the plant here, they'll also be required to provide a stormwater plan and improvements on the site to ensure proper drainage and a landscape plan as well to provide appropriate buffering to the neighboring properties. Because the existing use on the property is a legally existing non-conforming use, and we'll jump back to 2007 when the city annexed this corridor of properties, all of the properties along this area were zoned SF, single family, which you may recall from the Amston trailer discussion last month. Many of these properties had existing businesses on them, such as IMI, that was, once the rezoning became SF, they became legally non-conforming uses. So when they want to change of use or expand the use of their current site, then they have to come before you and request that variance of use because it's currently zoned SF, single family. Now, in the evaluation of the variance request, again, you have your criteria that have to be met that staff has to review. So the statutory criteria, there are 5 items. And again, I won't read them, but I'll just explain them through the staff analysis. The variance of use to permit the expansion of the existing concrete production facility will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. The use of the property, while expanded, will be the same as exists currently. Other improvements such as drainage that are required should improve conditions within that general area. The second criteria, the requested use variance would not affect the use and value of the area adjacent to the property in a substantially adverse manner. The proposed use is strictly an expansion of the existing use, and the applicant is intending to make improvements to the property that should help the current condition. The property has historically been used for a concrete production facility. The proposal is an existing expansion of the current use of the property. Given the current improvements, it's unlikely that the site would be viable for traditional residential uses that are permitted in the SF zoning district. Because the existing use of the property is commercial industrial in nature, it limits the viability of the property for any permitted residential uses in the future. The strict application of the terms of our zoning ordinance for SF would constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to this property. And then the last approval criteria, the City of Lebanon Comprehensive Plan designates this property for industrial uses, and the proposed land use would be permitted with an industrial zoning classification. This request would not interfere substantially with Lebanon's comprehensive plan. So it's with the staff recommendation that this board approve the variance of use request to permit the expansion of the existing concrete facility, to approve the expansion of the existing concrete production facility use within the SF single-family residential zoning classification, subject to the following conditions: that the approval of the variance use is limited to those concrete production facility uses proposed by the applicant. Any change in use or increase in the intensity of the use by the current applicant or any subsequent owners would require approval from the City of Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals. And then the last condition would be that the applicant submit drainage plans and calculations that meet the requirement of the Lebanon Stormwater Control Ordinance prior to the erection of the relocated concrete plant. I'll take any questions.
Yes, where is the tallest building going to be located on the property?
Sure.
And how close to Indianapolis Road?
So the plant is going to be relocated to the far southwest corner of the property, a highly underutilized portion of this property. So as you can see from the map here, Indianapolis Road to the front, and you can see their existing plant in production. It'll be straight to the west. So that southwest corner of the property will be where this plant will be relocated to. The applicant is proposing, as you can see by the rendering on your screen, landscape buffering on both the west side and the south side of the property line to help screen for the neighboring properties, which again are mostly agriculture and other industrial uses, but will still meet the requirements that our UDO sets forth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A year or two ago, IMI was before us, and can we go back to that one picture there?
And they were putting in a rock crushing or cement crushing plant. Does this take, it's probably a question for the applicant, but will that go ahead and stay, or is this going to take the place of that?
My understanding of this, the current location is not being utilized, so I can let the applicant further explain, but my understanding is this is an unutilized area where they will be relocating the plant to. So there's nothing there that would be moved or removed to accommodate this relocation, but again, I'm sure the applicant can get into a little more detail on that.
I'm sorry?
Where the junkyard is.
That's-
They put in that crush.
Well, but it's all one property though. His question was where the old car repair shop was. That's where the crushing plant was,
I think,
correct?
I may be speaking out of turn, but this is, I think, is a portable crushing unit that they use, and it may be movable from place to place.
Why doesn't the applicant step forward? Thank you, Matt.
Good evening, Board. My name is, it's actually not Matt Watts, it's Adam Watts. I apologize for that. To answer your question, yeah, Ron, you are correct. That is a portable crushing unit with an IDEM, Office of Air Quality, portable air permit that I do relocates on as we move that crusher. IMI only owns one of those units, and it's very, very seldom that those units are on any of our ready-mix facilities. Only when we gather, large amounts of comeback material that we will then crush on site. This is my counterpart, Steve Geiger. I wasn't personally at that last meeting when we were talking about this, but maybe he has something to say about that.
The recycling.
Yeah.
So as we get returned concrete, again, Steve Geiger, IMI, live in Indianapolis. As we have customers that order concrete, and periodically there's maybe a yard or two that's returned to the site, what we'll do is gather that up in a certain spot on the property. We'll break it up, crush it with a portable crushing unit, and then kind of sell it out as basically recycled material. At times, there's a potential to reuse that recycled product back into the concrete. That's kind of a new thing that's coming in our industry. I would say roughly that portable moves in there 2 to 3 times a year, roughly, for about a week at a time.
If that, I think this year it's only been one time. To piggyback on what Matt said, I don't think it's a secret that this corridor is extremely desirable. Lebanon, Whitestown, that I-65 corridor, and this particular plant move will be an incredible benefit in terms of being able to meet the production, not only with the city of Lebanon, but COD work, NDOT work, construction right now, I think everybody knows is a booming business. And this particular plant move will allow us to meet that demand. Speaking with Matt and Ben a few times these last few months, we already have an existing plant there, and I think moving this particular plant to meet that demand and also do some drainage calculations with our engineers and some beautification buffering, landscaping plans that meet the city of Lebanon's UDO. We'll also do a side beautification project, so to speak, with the property itself. So we feel like we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And we think it'll really benefit the county and the community.
Well, I know you want to be a good neighbor, but how will this affect the neighbors?
Well, I mean, we, aside from the beautification, which, which I think if you've seen the property in the past will be the number one benefit in terms of property values, what have you. And number two, it really won't affect them at all because we have a plant there now. So.
Right. And this one's going to be back behind the,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
are you going to run the front plant, or will that close and you be coming out of the new one?
We will supplement the front plant too, but it runs so seldom that, you know, that we just can't meet that demand, which is why this is so important for us to move this other plant there. You know, what the property is used for now is basically a maintenance truck shop. So a ready-mix Jiffy Lube, so to speak. We will run out of there from time to time based on customer demand, but it is, it's very seldom. And we're looking at some of our futures and some of our trends. And it's very imperative to IMI, you know, to move this other facility toward the back of the property. It's further back off the road. It will be behind our already existing structures. So, you know, we feel like it's, will basically be a non-event to the city and the county.
Are you bringing this plant from down there, or is this going to be a new plant?
We are relocating the plant that is already there.
Okay.
Now, we'll do, you know, we'll do some painting. It'll give us the opportunity to do some painting and some beautification before we erect it again. You know, it'll be more enclosed, and it'll be, you know, more, you know, it'll be more appeasing to the eyeball if you can even see it from the road, which, you know, with the berming and landscaping and things like that, you know, we want to, you know, obviously concrete ready-mix plants aren't the most appeasing thing, but we feel like with those things in our plan, that's going to go a long way to keep it hidden and kind of out of everybody's way.
Thank you.
I have two questions. The first question, are you intending on doing away with the South Street plant in the near future?
Don't necessarily have an answer for you on that. It's currently not our intent right now to do that. But we were here tonight to present this topic in particular. So don't have an answer for you. That's a going concern, and we plan to continue to operate it.
My second question, are you intending on putting a solid surface drive in back to the plant itself?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And, you know, let me chime in a little bit on your first question, Bruce. You know, one of the things that we don't want to have to do is utilize the plant in downtown Lebanon more than we need to, which this particular move will benefit that extremely. You know, it's all about, our business is all about timing. The jobs that we anticipate having to service are going to be very large, and the sales contracts on these require a ready-mix truck every 6 to 7 minutes. The truck traffic being out at Indianapolis Road closer to the interstate will be a gigantic help than, you know, X amount of ready-mix trucks coming out of the downtown facility.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Once again, this is a public meeting. Does anybody care to speak?
Hi, my name is Teresa Wilson. I live at 3510 South Indianapolis Road. We're next door to IMI. I actually had just a couple of different questions for them, perhaps. What we do here from time to time, the busting of the concrete, so, you know, we know that they use that, but it hasn't been bad, so I'll give them that. They haven't been doing it on a consistent basis that it's so annoying that we can't stand it and have to leave. But one of the things that I'm concerned about is if I'm understanding what's going on, is they're closing the downtown plant and moving it to, no, that's not right, okay.
One on the south side of Indianapolis.
The south side of Indianapolis,
Yes.
okay. So they are doing that, and then they're going to be bringing that business to Indianapolis Road. So I just kind of want to know how many more trucks we might be seeing, because these trucks are going up and down our roads all the time. I know when they start business, sometimes they do it at 3 in the morning, and our house is pretty close to Indianapolis Road, and you do hear that. I mean, you can't help but hear these elephants, you know, squeaking and going down the truck, down the road. They're not always at that time, but from time to time they have been. But there's a lot of dust that cause that. We can't not keep our house clean on the outside because of just the dust from that. If we could have them just realize that when they're pulling out of their building, that they are still going into the residential portion of Indianapolis Road, and not, you know, rev up that engine, you know, I don't know what that's called, but they rev that up and it gets a little loud. We do know that they have this big light that shines completely down into our backyard. Maybe that's going to be going away, I don't know. I assume they're going to still have some sort of lights there, but we're in the country. We were in the country. It'd be nice to still have that. If I want a security light, I'll put one on, not have them, you know, shine in our yard. So basically, my big concern is how much bigger are they going to be, and how much more, just not destructive, but noticeable is it going to be to us, to our neighbors across, especially when they're driving down, and they do drive, you know, back and forth quite a bit. And that's, I mean, other than that, they have been a good neighbor, but it's still, I know, when we live next door to them, so.
Need to wrap it up.
I'm actually through. I just had those questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll have an answer here when everybody gets done.
Thank you, council. My name is Bruce Atkins, and I do know a little bit about concrete, and they're talking about running a truck every 7 minutes. But I would ask that if they can, for the noise and everything there, if they use earth embankments to cut down on the noise. IMI is a good company. You know, I've been on job with them and everything, but if they were my neighbor, you know, the earth embankments would cut down on the noise that the lady hears. But I think they answered it. They're hoping to run every 7 minutes a truck out there with the improvement. So I think he kind of answered the question, but as I said again, they are a great company, and I think they'd be good neighbors to everybody, but I think that you need to look at the plan on the earth to keep the noise down for the neighbors, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else care to speak?
Yes, Nate Mansu with 3358 South Indianapolis Road. First, I want to start out with tasks that the council tables this, because the Corwin residence, which is within 300 feet of the Indiana state required legal notification, did not receive a legal notification. Thereby, this entire meeting is null and void. So I'm asking at this point that you guys take a 2/3 vote and cancel this and table it until next month.
Is that your only question then, or?
No, I have more, but that's where it starts.
We'll address that after, once we follow up with Matt, just to confirm notice.
Okay. So, this IMI property needs to be held to the existing enforced residential zoning and deny this use variance. This property is only 2 acres. They have not joined the 2 properties together, and so they have not done such. And this property does not need to be single industrial use because they just don't have the surrounding area around it currently. Zone the property. If we're going to do it, let's just get it done with and zone it heavy industrial use, and not continue with this second time of doing single family variance. It's not consistent with any of the adjacent property owners, and they're not able to have full enjoyment, as you just heard, of their property. They shouldn't have to defend their property, as we just heard, from environmentally or noise or light. The last couple of years, there's been a new concrete plant that's built by Shelby Materials on Mule Barn Road, just north of 32, by the tanks. And the city of Lebanon needs to hold IMI accountable to those same standards that, Shelby Materials has done a great job of it. They don't have all the issues that this plant has had. We're asking for noise covenances for all operations only to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., all lights to be out at 7 p.m. or dusk, and to resume at 7 a.m. or dawn. That way the neighbors can have more enjoyment. They currently are discharging contaminated hazardous waste onto the adjoining neighbor's property. The Mayor Gentry's administration has ignored both requests and emails by adjacent property owners, as well as in-person requests for information, as well as a stop work order for the property. And the city has done absolutely nothing on that. And that's all documented. The comprehensive area plan that was mentioned a little bit ago only changed with this administration. Before, in the previous 2 administrations, it was not, since '07. The tallest building around, this thing's going to stick out like a sore thumb. I've been told by the IMI property, or the IMI employees, that it's going to be upwards of 100 feet in the air, and there's nothing even close. So you'll probably be able to see this thing all the way from downtown there, if that makes sense. IMI has ignored previous requests by this board. They were promised that they would put a 6 feet surrounding privacy fence a little over 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago. They have not done so. They actually tore down the neighbor's property fence with the assumption that they were going to put up a new fence. They never did. And they should be moving this plant that they so desire to. They should be moving it to West 96th Street.
To wrap it up.
Okay. IMI has been trying to circumvent the laws and permits and have their, and the IMI employees say that they would rather pay the fine than to have to deal with the compliance. The property that we spoke about, the concrete crushing, has been cited by the Boone County Health Department, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, the US EPA, for the Clean Water Act, as well as the Clean Air Act. They've been cited by the Lebanon Police Department for 2 times for criminal trespassing, and they just have not been a good neighbor. They have no IDEM Rule 6 industrial plan for this property yet, and they've been using it. Please. So they actually have a pending criminal investigation on this property.
We're done. We're done. That's it.
Thank you.
No.
Okay, anybody else care to speak? Okay, we will close the public end of the meeting. I guess Matt Reynolds, my question is, where do we stand on the notices?
The notices were confirmed to be sent out in the appropriate time frame. All the properties within 300 feet of the subject property, so of all the parcels, not just of one of the parcels, but of all. I believe there are 5, double check here. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm sorry, 4 parcels. So within 300 feet of all 4 of those parcels, notifications were sent out in the required timeframe. I don't have the confirmation with me of the receipt of those certified mailings, but we do have confirmation that those did go out.
That's the issue, because there's 6 parcels, not 4.
Okay. Thank you.
No, I was referring to the IMI properties. IMI has 4 parcels. So all the properties within 300 feet of those 4 parcels.
Okay. That's the only question I have, I think, for the city. We need the applicants to step forward again. Did you make notes to the questions?
Yes, sir, we did. And, you know, I think this woman has she has some viable concerns, I really do. In regards to our last crushing operation, that was a pretty high-intense operation. I believe it was a couple of weeks back. That is not a typical situation.
I know when I was here at the 400 election, and it was supposed to be on the far side, so.
Yeah.
And I understand that you have to move it around.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It's dusty, it's noisy, and that is not typical. That was just a situation where we had a lot of material. And again, I don't know what your experience has been, but aside from that, we typically only have that machine there about once or twice a year. Now, in terms of your lighting complaint, I'll do whatever you feel the need. I'll remediate that. I apologize. I didn't realize that, that was that bright.
We can put in certain can lightings that make it shine down.
Driving back from 267, you get halfway down that road, and there's your light. I think it's almost like a street light. It's nice and pretty, but it's.
I completely understand.
You can just have it slowed down.
Yeah.
There is an ordinance to how much light could go into somebody else's property, and the city will look into that and get that taken care of.
I know that in Gary's case, there's our house, and there's a field, and then there's his house. And his yard is also stuff.
We'll take care of that.
Steve and I we will definitely meet. We want to be good neighbors, and we'll meet that for you. The gentleman in the back with the burning, you had made a comment. When I was trying to, that 6 to 7 minute truck time frame was kind of, I was being aggressive there. So I didn't want people to think that was going to be a 24-hour thing.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if it would be.
It would not be, and that's why we want to meet the landscaping and berming with Matt and Ben and the UDO.
Of the noise on any concrete.
Exactly. I understand that. I want you, but again, Steve and I would be ecstatic if we had a truck every 7 minutes, but, I was just giving you kind of a worst case scenario there.
So what typically happens in a concrete operation, you've been around, and the first hour or so in the morning, we're batching a truck roughly every 7 minutes. And then that concrete goes and gets delivered, and it takes about almost 2 hours to make a complete round. And then we try and space the trucks out based on customer demand throughout the day, because we can only load so many trucks at a time. Depends on customer needs. I mean, really, it's the construction, it's the construction industry.
Let's continue on.
And lastly, to Mr. Mansu's complaints, I have documentation here. His last complaint with the hazardous waste, I have a documentation here that we have no violations as of last week regarding that, because he complains every day and I have to go out to the facility and meet whatever agency he's complained to. But if you guys, I know we're busy, if you guys want to look through my materials, I brought it. I don't think it's necessary, but I will provide you that if you wish.
I guess this question was brought up, and I'll ask it from my own knowledge too. How many trucks do you anticipate being there full-time?
Roughly 15, probably stationed at the plant. Today we have 6. So again, based on, we move trucks around Indiana a little bit, so based on customer demand, but just looking at the market and the potential, 12 to 15.
Okay.
12 to 15 more, 15 total?
From 6 to 7.
Okay.
Up to 12 to 15.
Okay.
I think the privacy fence and the landscaping question was kind of a noise. They all kind of relate. So you're going to get with the city on landscaping?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
And he did say he would work with the neighbors on the lighting and the...
Yes,
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. I was gonna ask Matt too. I mean, I saw the plan.
Yeah,
It showed landscaping on the back and the side, but nothing up at the front.
So that, our engineer developed that, and I didn't have time to rescind that back row of landscaping, but I will get with Matt and Ben and their team on what we need to do to meet the UDO and what the city requires. Since that, you bring up a good point, because that's agricultural in the back. Why would you? So what we're going to do is take that high intensity and relocate it basically where Matt and Ben and his team, desire that to be, or what's written in your guys' bylaws.
In addition to that, with our neighbors, yeah, we can tweak the plan and put additional landscaping buffering between us.
Yeah, you get that far back, you don't know what that, you said IMI.
Yeah.
Okay, the public end of this is over, but you have anything else you want to say?
Lastly, I'd like to thank the gentleman for giving IMI I didn't pay for him to be here, so thanks for, thanks for the vote of confidence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any comments or questions? Need a motion, please.
I make a motion that approve the variance of use request to permit the expansion of the concrete production facility within the SF zoning classification, subject to the following conditions, which I'll repeat those since it's been a while. That the approval of the variance of use is limited to those concrete production facility uses proposed by the applicant. Any change or increase in the intensity or subsequent owners would have to reappear before the Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals. That the applicant submits drainage plans and calculations that meet the requirements of the Lebanon Stormwater Control Ordinance prior to the erection of the relocated concrete plant.
Okay, second, please.
I'll second.
Motion, we have motion and a second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman.
Aye.
Ed Kiger.
Aye.
Bruce Polly.
Aye.
Ron Edwards.
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we got 2 more to go, I believe. The next item then will be docket 2123. Here again, it is IMI, talking about the same property. You want to take over, Matt?
Yeah, a lot of the background we can skip since we just reviewed it, unless you guys wanted to spend another 15, 20 minutes here tonight.
No.
Well, so, same IMI subject property. The variance request before you is a building height variance. So the UDO allows a maximum industrial building height of 50 feet. The applicant is proposing to relocate their existing facility from the south side. The structure from the south side facility is approximately 100 feet in height. The reason the applicant is requesting a variance to permit relief, for this reason, that's why the applicant's requesting the variance. So the criteria, again, same as the first few applications that you had tonight. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, general welfare. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner, and then also strict application in terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties. The staff analysis, the relief from the building height requirement does not pose any imminent threat to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. The building construction will meet all applicable building standards, and the immediately adjacent properties are agricultural uses mostly, and that will not be impacted by the proposed location. The requested variance for relief from the building height requirement will not affect the use and value of the adjacent properties in a substantially adverse manner. The relocated facility is of similar height to the existing facility that's on the property, so the impact would be no different than what currently exists. And then lastly, the staff analysis, the strict application of the terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. The height of the proposed facility is similar to that which currently exists on the property. The applicant's proposal essentially mirrors the conditions that are currently on the property. So the staff recommendation recommends approval of the development standards variance to permit relief from the building height requirement of the UDO subject to the following condition: that the applicant provide the required buffer landscaping along the west and south property lines where current vegetation does not adequately screen the development site from the neighboring properties.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Strobe lighting on it. Is there going to be strobe lighting, or?
I'll have to allow the applicant.
It's going to be lit at the top by something, correct?
I will let the applicant address that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll let the applicant come forward again and I think answer the one question.
The lighting on the plant will be, it's not, the term strobe.
Is it going to be a flashing light?
Not unless we're required to do so. So the answer would be no.
Okay, if it is required, being you have good neighbors here, would you like to put a bonnet under it, or whatever it's called, a funnel shape, so that it doesn't protrude down onto their property?
Yes, sir, we will definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things, not to take too much time here, but this is a newer plant that is more technologically savvy than the plant that already exists there. It's a tolerant plant. It's a central mix plant, which means it's more efficient when it comes to loading trucks. The bag house on it collects more dust than the already existing facility. The cartridges for the bag house are easier to change. So one thing that I want to stress is this is one of our state-of-the-art facilities which is why we need the height variance, because there's more, there are more things to make it run more efficient inside the plant.
Thank you.
Any other questions for? Okay, thank you. Once again, anybody from the public care to speak? We'll close the public end of the meeting then, and I would like a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve docket 21-23.
Second.
You want to add the condition as well?
Oh, yeah, here, sorry about that. With the condition, recommend approval of the development of standard variance request to permit relief from the building height requirement of the Unified Developmental Ordinance, subject to the following conditions: that the applicant provide the required buffer landscaping along the west side and the south property lines where current vegetation does not adequately screen the development from the neighboring properties.
Thank you, sir. Second. Okay, now I have a motion and a second. Take roll, please.
Mark Bannerman. Chad Kiger.
Aye.
Bruce Polly.
Aye.
Ron Edwards.
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations, good luck. Docket number 21-24, Ryan Ottinger for the Lebanon Utilities. Property is located in the northeast corner of Abner Longley Park, comprised of approximately 2 acres. This is the first time that variance has appeared before the city of Lebanon. The subject property is an unimproved corner of the city park on the south side at the Conservation Club. Matt.
Thank you again, and we're down to our final application of the night. As Mr. Polly suggested, this is the first time this request has been before you. The subject property, as you can see from the screen, is located within Abner Longley Park. I'm going to try to zoom in for you. So Abner Longley is located there on the screen, the former Conservation Club property there to the top. The subject property will be located in this quadrant, on the northeast quadrant, just south of the Conservation Club and on the northeast side of Abner Longley, just to the west of the Hoyt properties there. So there'll be a 2-acre parcel that is going to be portioned out that will then become the property of Lebanon Utilities, and they are proposing to build a water storage facility on this unutilized part of our city property. So I'll pull up the plans here so that you can get a better idea. So this plan is rotated. So north is to the right. The Hoyt property now is to the bottom of the screen. Utilities are proposing a water booster station, which would be a building. Let me get to, let's go down. Mason building, the masonry siding and fiber lap, cement board, security, glass block lighting, or glass block windows. And then the storage tank would be just north of that. A large capacity storage tank. You've probably seen something similar as you've driven across 865, just on the south side of Zionsville. You'll see them on the south side of the road. But this particular property will be tucked away inside Abner Longley Park, and because of that, it will not abut a street. Our Unified Development Ordinance requires that all parcels abut a street. So this particular one will require a variance because it will sit several feet off of Hendricks Drive, but will be accessible by a roadway through Abner Longley Park. So the Unified Development, again, lots that shall abut on a street, but because of the proposed location, there's no access to the lot from any public right-of-way. The applicant's requesting relief from this requirement, and then the second variance is a fence standard. Because of the necessary security requirements, this is a public water source. So they are requesting a variance to allow them to use barbed wire fencing on top of, or barbed wire on top of the chain link fence. Again, you've heard it several times tonight, and I'll try to be brief on it, but your evaluation criteria, your 3 of them, we'll start with the lot standard. The relief from the lot standard requirement requiring a lot street frontage poses no imminent threat to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. The lot will derive access from a drive from within Abner Longley Park out to Hendricks Drive. The requested variance will not affect the use or value of the adjacent properties in a substantially adverse manner. The use of the lot will create minimal traffic and will have appropriate access from the current drive within Abner Longley. And lastly, on that one, strict application of the terms of the UDO would result in practical difficulties. In order to locate the water storage tank in an underutilized area of the park and provide ownership to Lebanon Utilities, a lot needed to be created in an area that was not accessible directly from a public street. The project is not feasible in this location without support of this variance request. And then on the fence standards, the relief of the fence standards, again, allowing barbed wire pose no imminent threat to public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. It's in an underutilized area of the park that will see very little traffic and will not have an impact on the general public. The variance will not affect the use or value of the adjacent property in a substantially adverse manner. The fence is in an area away from the highly active locations in the park and will be appropriately screened to limit the visibility. And lastly, the strict application of the UDO would result in practical difficulties for the use of the property. Because the water storage tank will be part of the public water system, it is required to maintain a high security presence to that particular property. So the project would not be feasible without the support of this particular variance allowing the use of barbed wire. So the City of Lebanon Planning Staff recommends approval of the development standard variance request to permit relief from the lot standard requirement as well as the fence standard requirement of the UDO. And I'll be happy to answer questions.
I got a couple. Does this have to go before Planning Commission also?
Great question. Yes. Yes.
So, and I don't know what the city standards are, but it looks to me to be a block building with the gables and wood or whatever. Are the percentages working out to?
The applicable building standards will be addressed and reviewed during the Plan Commission, development plan review during TAC, and the subsequent review leading to the Plan Commission meeting. I couldn't tell you exactly right now, simply because that's not pertinent to the discussion of the two variance requests. The physical structure, the standards of the structure, I assume that they plan to meet the city requirements. I don't want to speak for them, but they are not requesting any variances for the building standards that are required in our UDO.
Okay, the last question I got is this barbed wire. Does the city have a standard on barbed wire that, I mean, it's not going to be razor wire or anything to that extent?
I may let the applicant talk about the exact nature of what would be classified as barbed wire. I just know that the city, our UDO, does not allow barbed wire on any non-farm parcels or developments, so that's why the request is before you tonight, but I can let them maybe discuss exactly what would be going up.
Would the applicant step forward?
Might be some disappointment I'm not Ryan Oninger tonight. My name's John Leitner. I'm with Butler, Fairman, and Cipher Civil Engineers. We're the consulting engineers that are putting the plans together and helping Lebanon Utilities out with this project. So I'll entertain any questions, or if you guys want me to go through a brief overview of the project and what exactly we're trying to accomplish, let me know.
Does anybody have any
I'm just
questions?
curious, will all that wooded area be cleared? I mean, will the tower be visible from the park? And
So we have already started on some tree clearing that happened previously, but the idea is to keep outside of the fence a wooded buffer so that you won't be able to see the,
Nice.
Or you'll be shielded as much as possible.
Right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, how high was the tower?
It's going to be, so it's a ground storage tank. It's not, you see out here, you see the elevated storage tank. It'll be about 30 feet tall. And it's a concrete structure is what it'll be as well.
Any other questions? Thank you. It is a public meeting. Would anybody care to voice their approval or concerns? Okay, we'll close the public end of the meeting. There's no further questions. I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the development standard variance request to permit relief from the lot standards and the fence standards.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We need a roll call.
Mark Banneman.
Aye.
Chad Kiger.
Aye.
Bruce Polly.
Aye.
Ron Edwards.
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we have any, that's the last item we have. The next board meeting would be Monday, May the 3rd. Is there any old business or new business or whatever? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned until May the 3rd. Everybody have a good evening.
Long meeting.
Yeah.